Hello everyone. In this video session, we are going to discuss about the topic life processes. Life processes is the most interesting and the most important topic in class 10 biology. So let us start the topic. Let us go into the details of life process. So before going into the different types of life process, we have to understand few basics. Now, what are these basics? In the basics, we have the first and foremost aspect, that is the idea, the concept of living. The concept of living. Now, how do we consider or how do we define any object, any organism as living? What are the different criteria? On what basis we define the particular organism as a living organism? There are different types of ideas. There are different types of aspects by which we can say the particular organism is living. The one such is movement. So one such idea or concept of defining a particular organism as living is movement. In layman, we ask, suppose that what is a living organism? How can you say the particular organism is living? In that case, the particular person will immediately answer, if the particular organism is moving, then it is a living organism. So movement comes to our mind at the first as the criteria of living. But this criteria is not applicable for all the organisms. Suppose if I take the example of plants, trees, they are not moving. But can we say that those plants are non-living? No, they are not non-living. In such cases, we will have to see some other criteria for defining the plants as a living organism. So, in such cases, what we see the same movement, but the movement in the form of growth. Right? So, the same movement we observe. So, we will try to observe whether the movement of branches are taking place or not. Even though the organism is not moving from one place to other, still the organism is growing. It is moving its parts from one place to other. The branches are expanding. How the branches are expanding? Because the plant is living. Right? Okay. So, movement is the basic criteria. We can say the organism is moving, so it is living. The organisms which do not move, in such cases, what we see, we go a little deeper into that and we see the growth of the particular organism. Now, growth of the organism, sometimes we can see the growth is stagnant. The growth is not happening after a certain period of life. Like in plants or in animals, or you take the example of human beings. After a certain age, there is no overall growth for the particular individual. Now, in such cases, how can we say that the particular individual or organism is living? In that case, we have to go little more deeper into the concept and we have to see whether the movement is taking place at the molecular level or not. Right? So, the third type of movement is the molecular movement. Okay, so molecular movement. Now, what is this molecular movement? So, molecular movements can take place in the deeper part of the body. That means when we talk about the cells, the cell as a living concept or cell as a living entity, during that time we can take molecular movement into account. Now, only the molecular movements are very smaller in size. So they can take place in the cellular level. Now this molecular movements are the basic concept of being living. Even though the organism may not be moving, the organism may not be growing, still it has to continue this molecular movement from life to death. The molecular movements cannot stop during the lifespan of a particular organism. Now this molecular movements, that means they are carrying out some processes. That means the sum of the molecules are transported from one place to other. Right? So that is the basic foundation of our topic, that is life processes. So every cell carries out this molecular movements in the form of life process. Right? So now let us go into what is actually the life process. Now the molecular movements have to be done in the continuous way. As I told you, it has to be carried out from life till death, the total lifespan of a particular organism. Now let us see how this molecular movements, they complete life process in any individual. Okay? Now the molecular movements are not only for sustenance of life. So sustenance of life means they have to carry out some of the activities which is going to sustain the life. Now life processes, the molecular movement that is being carried out during the life process. Now what is the purpose of life process? The life process purpose is to sustain life. So what are those two, the purpose of life process to sustain the life? As I was telling you, now two important things, the sustenance of life is taking place. It is taking place to sustain with the help of. So let us now see what are the two more important, the most important aspects of sustaining life. In that, my first one, movement of molecules, repair and maintain. So two things are repair and maintain. So to sustain the life throughout the lifespan of a particular organism, throughout the life, that means from the birth to death, they have to sustain by using two aspects or by using two methods, that is repair and maintain. Okay? Now for repair and maintain, we need this micro movements of molecules. Repair and maintain, they need energy, and the energy can be obtained from food. So when we go deep into these concepts of repair and maintain, we can understand the essentiality of life processes also. So these two are the important aspects, the repair and maintain process. And why are they needed? They are needed for the sustenance of life. Now for this we should understand how this repair and maintain functions are carried out. The repair and maintain are dependent on few aspects. Now let us discuss what are the different things, what are the different processes on which the repair and maintain functions are dependent. So as we know that when we do any kind of function, any work is done by the body or any other entity, they require energy. Whether it is a living or non-living, they require energy. The energy for non-living may be the electrical energy, maybe the wind energy, maybe some other form of energy. But for living organisms, they need a specific type of energy. Now, what is this specific type of energy? The energy must be produced inside the body. Okay, so for life sustenance of life, so to sustain life, we need few factors. Now, what are these factors? The factors, first in that is energy. Okay, so we know that for any kind of work to be completed, we need the assistance of energy. So without the energy, without the presence of energy, without the help of energy, we cannot complete any kind of work. So when the cells, the body is doing some kind of work to repair and maintain the living entity or to sustain the life, then they must require energy. Now, energy, we know that can neither be created nor it can be destroyed. So it can only be transformed from one form to another. So when we talk about the body requires energy or it produces energy, that means it is not exactly producing the energy, it is converting the energy from one form to another. Now, what is the other form from which the energy is converted in the living cells? The form in which the energy was stored is our food. So when we need energy, we also need food, right? Okay. Now when we need food, we have to also understand how to make the energy, right? So how to make the energy? We need one more assistance. And the third major assistance is done by the oxidizing agent. Oxidizing agent, who can oxidize the food, and the food can be converted into energy. Now, in this case, the oxidizing agent is oxygen. Right? Okay. Now, first thing we have to understand, we need energy now. Right? And energy can be obtained from food. And we need one more also criteria, that is for oxidizing agent. So energy can be obtained with the help of food as well as an oxidizing agent, that is oxygen, which is readily available in the atmosphere for us. Okay, now what is going to happen? So the process of energy production, that needs the process of intake of food, right? So for intake of food, we need to have proper nutrition facility. The intake of food and the utilization of food. For oxidizing agent to come inside the body, we need to have a proper respiration. So respiration. Okay, so we need to have proper respiration. Now, for respiration and nutrition, both are required for energy production. So respiration will provide the oxidizing agent, nutrition will provide the carbon compound. Okay, the carbon compound which can be oxidized is obtained from nutrition. So we know that the food, the best method of getting the energy is from a food which contains carbon compound. And this carbon compounds, when they are transferred from one organism to other, they provide us with some amount of energy. Now in the nature, we organisms as animals, they are not capable of producing this carbon compounds. Now who is capable of producing this carbon compounds? The carbon compounds are produced by the organisms who can synthesize this carbon compound by utilizing the solar energy. You all must have heard about the process photosynthesis and the autotrophs. So the plants are autotrophs because they can prepare their own food, and we organisms, the heterotrophs who depend on the autotrophs, we take the food from the plant source directly or indirectly. So now we need a carbon compound that is provided by the autotrophs by synthesizing, utilizing the solar energy. Now the solar energy is converted into food or the carbon compound. The carbon compound now contains the solar energy, so it is not produced, it is just converted. The solar energy is converted into the carbon compound. Now the carbon compound, with the process of oxidizing process in the cell, that will be again converted into our energy, which helps for sustenance of life. Now when we talk about all this process, if the particular organism or it is taking place in a single cell, it is possible for the utilization is easy. But when we talk about a complex organism where it is produced, the other cells who are very far away from the place of production, how are they going to get the energy? How are they going to get the oxygen? How are they going to get the food? So we need another system for the supply of these elements. Now what is the other system we need? So first thing, we need a nutrition system, proper nutrition system. Second thing, we need a respiratory system for providing oxygen and producing the energy. Now after the production, we need one more thing, that is a transporting system. A transporting system. So when it is a question of single cells in our body or the single celled organisms like the amoeba, yeast, bacteria and so on, when this is a question of this kind of organisms or a single cell in our body, then the process is very simple. The cell can do its work on its own and it has all the capability to carry out the nutrition, transportation, respiration, everything. You have studied the cell in 9th standard. The cell is a unit of life and it can carry out all the functions, it can sustain on its own. But when it is the question of a multicellular organism, we do not have the same system or same process. It cannot. In a single cell, the functions are carried out by only the plasma membrane. Whether it is the question of nutrition, taking up the food material, whether it is a question of transportation inside the cell, cytoplasmic transportation, whether it is the question of energy production, that is cellular respiration, everything can be carried out inside the cell by taking the oxygen through plasma membrane. So all the functions can be carried out by the structure which is called as plasma membrane. But when it is the question of higher organisms, the multicellular organisms, we need to have proper systems. We need to have a proper arrangement so that all the things, the food, the energy, the oxygen, everything can be reaching each and every cell to carry out their own function. So we have this systems, there is a hierarchy of a system. Like when it is the question of single cell, there is no issues. So what process they follow? So they follow the process of simple diffusion. Plasma membrane follows the process of simple diffusion, and in a single cell plasma membrane with the process of simple diffusion carries out all these functions. But when it is the question of higher organisms, they have a gradation of organ systems. So it starts with a single cell, a collection of cells, they form tissue, and tissues, many different types, collectively form organ, and organs form organ system. Okay, so this is the complete hierarchy of the systems. So simple diffusion is not possible in higher organisms or complex organisms. They need to have a proper system, a proper mechanism to carry out all these functions, to repair and to maintain the life, right? So after all these processes, the transporting, the respiration, the energy production, in all this process, finally what happens, each and every cell, they undergo some metabolic process, some biochemical reactions that take place, and the end products, that some of the end products are useful for us, that is utilized by the body, and some of the end products are not useful for us. So they are termed as the waste materials. Now the waste materials are also to be transported by a proper system which will remove this waste from our body. So now the fourth process in this will be, the fifth process in this will be the excretory system. So finally, the fifth process I have written is the excretory system. Now, for sustenance of life, we need repair and maintenance. Okay, so let us sum up all the things. First thing we discussed, life needs sustenance, and the sustenance of life can be achieved by two important processes, that is repair and the maintenance of the life. Now repair and maintenance of life means it has to take place at the cellular level. Even though it is a complex organism, even after that, each and every living cell must be in a living condition. It must sustain the life, each and every living cell. For that, each and every living cell must continue the process of repair and maintenance. And the repair and maintenance work can be achieved by different types of processes. It is the requirement. Now what are the processes? The processes of energy production. It is dependent on food, so we have a nutrition system. It is dependent on oxidizing agent, the oxygen, so we have a respiratory system to provide food and oxidizing agent to produce energy. Now after it is produced, as it is a complex organism, it has to be transported, so we need a proper transporting system. And after the transporting is over, the metabolic process are over, the biochemical reactions are over, there will be some toxic substance byproducts will be produced, and those byproducts has to be removed from the body. Now who is going to remove that? We need one more system for removal of the byproducts, the toxic waste byproducts. So we need excretory system. So now this gives us the idea of the total processes that is taking place to sustain life of any living organism. So hereafter in the next sessions we will be reading one by one each of the systems. How are they helping to sustain life?